The doctor's hands were shaking. Not dramatically. Not the way they do in movies, just a fine tremor as she scrolled through my lab results. But I'm an accountant. I notice small numbers and small movements. Her fingers hovered over the mouse, then froze. She stared at the monitor, then at me, then back at the screen. All the color drained from her face. In that split second, I was certain she was about to say tumor, or autoimmune, or some other word you can at least Google and plan around. I'd been bracing for bad news for months. I thought I was ready. I was not ready for what she actually said. Dr. Hannah Patel stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Nora, can you come with me to my office? Not the exam room. Her private office. She shut the door, closed the blinds, turned off the speaker on her desk phone. Then she looked at me with something I had never seen on a doctor's face before. Fear. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. You need to leave your house. Today. Quietly. Don't pack a bag. Don't tell your husband anything is wrong. Do everything exactly the same until you're safely out of there. Do you understand me? I opened my mouth to ask why. She spun her monitor toward me. When I read the numbers on that screen, my brain understood before my heart would accept it. Arsenic. Chronic. Low dose arsenic poisoning. My name is Nora Ellis. I'm 32 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm a forensic accountant, which basically means I get paid to be professionally suspicious of numbers. I've been married for 4 years to a man named Colin Mercer, who sells medical devices for a major biotech company. And for the last 5 months, I have been slowly, systematically, quietly dying. It didn't start like a crime story. It started like burnout. First came the exhaustion, the kind that doesn't lift after a weekend off. The kind where you forget your own PIN at the grocery store, where climbing a single flight of stairs feels like running a marathon underwater. Then the nausea arrived. Not intense, just this constant rolling unease in my stomach, like I was trapped on a boat that never found shore. My hair began to thin. At first, just a few more strands than normal in the shower drain, then clumps on my pillow. The drain clogging twice a week. My mind went foggy. I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence, read the same email 3 times, and still not absorb a word. At work, I'd stare at spreadsheets for an hour and forget what I was supposed to be looking for. I went to 3 different doctors over those months. Stress. Said the first, probably anemia. Said the second, maybe hormones. Said the third, they ordered basic labs. Suggested more sleep, less caffeine, yoga, iron supplements. One gently implied I might be anxious and overworking myself. I believed them. I believed everyone, including my husband. Colin drove me to every single appointment. He sat beside me in waiting rooms, fingers laced through mine, asking the doctors smart, detailed questions. He took notes on his phone, reminded me to mention every symptom. Nurses adored him. Receptionists told me I was lucky to have someone so attentive. One of them even leaned in and whispered, "You found a good one." I smiled and agreed, because I thought I had. Back in Dr. Patel's office, that illusion shattered in about 10 seconds. She pointed to the screen. "These are your toxicology results. The levels aren't high enough to kill you quickly. They are exactly high enough to keep you very sick for a very long time." I stared at the word arsenic like it was written in a foreign alphabet. Could this be from water I managed, or food, or something in the environment? She shook her head slowly. "Your home and office are both on the city water system. The heavy metals test on your tap water came back clean. This pattern," she tapped the numbers with her fingernail, "is consistent with intentional, repeated exposure to small doses over an extended period." The word hung between us like a live grenade. Intentional. She lowered her voice further. "I need to ask you some very specific questions, and I apologize in advance for how invasive they might feel. Who usually prepares your food at home?" "Both of us," I said automatically. "We trade off. He cooks more dinners. I do weekends. We order in a lot. Drinks." She pressed. "Anything you consume daily that only one person ever prepares?" And that's when it hit me. Like stepping into an elevator shaft you didn't know was empty. Colin makes me a smoothie, I heard myself say, every morning for the last 5 months. The timeline landed in my chest like a sledgehammer. 5 months of smoothies, 5 months of sickness. He'd said he was worried I skipped breakfast too often. He'd researched the perfect blend for energy and recovery. It tasted like grass clippings mixed with chalk. But I choked it down every morning because he'd made it for my health. Because I thought it was love. Dr. Patel watched my face change. She didn't try to soften what she saw there. What does your husband do for work? Medical device sales, I whispered. Farm adjacent. He understands drugs, dosages, mechanisms. He knows exactly how bodies respond to chemicals. She closed her eyes for one careful breath. Nora, listen to me very carefully. Don't confront him. Don't change your routine suddenly. If he realizes you know, he could panic and increase the dose or switch tactics entirely. You need to leave safely and talk to the police. She handed me a card with a personal email address and a handwritten phone number. Use this, not your shared computer, not your home Wi-Fi. Assume he can see anything you normally use. I walked out of that medical building on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed in my purse. Colin, how did it go, babe? I made your favorite salmon for dinner. Got your smoothie stuff restocked for the week too. Love you. Can't wait to see you. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Favorite dinner. Smoothie stuff restocked. Love you. I typed back with trembling fingers. All good. Just anemia. Nothing serious. On my way home. Love you too. Then I sat in my car in the parking garage and screamed until there was no sound left in my throat. That night, I walked into our house smiling like nothing was wrong. I kissed my husband hello. He smelled like aftershave and the garlic he was sodding. The normalcy of it nearly made me vomit on our kitchen floor. How'd it go? He asked, voice rich with concern. Just low iron, I said lightly. Dr. Patel thinks supplements will fix it. She says I should be feeling better in a few weeks. He exhaled in obvious relief. See, we're gonna get you back to normal. I've been researching some extra vitamins for you too. Of course he had. I thanked him. I sat at the table. I ate the salmon. I laughed when he told a story about a ridiculous surgeon he'd met that day. I let him hold me on the couch while we watched a show. The whole time, my mind was a split screen. One side replaying every smoothie he'd ever handed me, the other whispering, "Don't let him see you know. Don't let him see you know." The smoothies were my first problem. He always made them while I was getting ready for work, then watched me take the first sips before he left. If I suddenly refused, alarm bells would detonate in his head. So the next morning, I lied before he could hand it to me. Dr. Patel mentioned something about my new iron supplement. I said casually, not looking up from my phone. Apparently, it binds with protein if I take it too close to a high-protein meal. Can I drink this a little later in the morning after the pill absorbs? He frowned, thinking it through, then nodded. Sure, just don't forget. I'll leave it in the fridge for you. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I poured most of it down the sink. I forced myself to drink a few swallows every day, just enough that my lab numbers wouldn't spike dramatically in the other direction and tip him off. Meanwhile, my body slowly started to recover. On the outside, I became an actress playing my own dying role. I dusted pale foundation on my face before he got home to keep myself looking washed out. I complained of headaches even on good days. I moved more slowly than I needed to. Sometimes I'd lie in bed napping while he tiptoed around the house, checking on me like a devoted caregiver. In reality, I was staring at the ceiling, building a mental checklist. Police, evidence, money, escape plan. If he was performing for an audience, I was performing for my life. The more my head cleared, the more puzzle pieces clicked into place. 2 years earlier, Colin had gently suggested I let him handle our finances. You work with numbers all day, he'd said, rubbing my shoulders. You shouldn't have to come home and think about bills and spreadsheets. Let me give you a break. It sounded loving. Thoughtful. So I handed over the logins. I also hadn't noticed how he trimmed my friendships down to almost nothing. He never forbade me from seeing anyone. He just nudged. Do you really feel good after hanging out with Jade? He'd ask afterward. She's always so negative. I just want you surrounded by positive energy. Little comments, little sighs, every time I made plans. Eventually, the effort of constantly reassuring him outweighed the joy of going out. So I stopped asking. My world shrank until it contained only him. Death by suggestion. One afternoon, while he was supposedly stuck in meetings, I went into the home office. Old instincts kicked in, the same instincts that once found $1.8 million hidden under miscellaneous operating expenses for a corporate client. I opened the filing cabinet, the password manager, the insurance folder I'd never really examined before. There it was, a life insurance policy taken out 10 months earlier. On me. $750,000. Colin listed as sole beneficiary. He'd purchased that policy for months before the poisoning began. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down on the floor. Further digging revealed a separate online savings account I hadn't known existed. Roughly $40,000 had been transferred over the past year from our joint checking, labeled vaguely as conference fees and business development. It would look like normal spending to most people. Unfortunately for Colin, he'd married someone who spent her entire career following money that didn't want to be found. I was done being his blind spot. The following week, he told me he had a late client dinner. As soon as his taillights disappeared, I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance. He drove downtown to a restaurant I'd never been to. I parked across the street and watched through the window. He wasn't meeting a client. He was meeting a woman in a short blazer and expensive earrings. She looked about 28, with sleek dark hair and the kind of designer handbag you buy in payment plans. They hugged like people who knew each other's bodies. But something was off. He was all charm and animated gestures. Leaning forward, touching her arm, she kept glancing at her phone. Shoulders tight, smile never quite reaching her eyes. She looked less like a woman in love and more like someone trapped in a negotiation she couldn't exit gracefully. I didn't know her name then. Later I'd learn it was Tessa Ward, and that she thought she was Colin's future. I also noticed something closer to home. Colin's mother, Evelyn, who had always considered me not quite right for her precious son, had suddenly become incredibly attentive over the past month. Soup deliveries, daily check-in calls, sitting at my bedside while I pretended to sleep. It seemed like a personality transplant until I overheard a phone call one afternoon. Thanks for stopping by, Mom, Colin said quietly in the hallway. I just feel better knowing someone's with her when I can't be. He wasn't just building an alibi with doctors. He was building one with his family too. Evelyn thought she was finally making up for years of coolness toward me. In reality, she was his unpaid surveillance camera, documenting my decline. I had enough to understand what he was doing. I still needed proof tight enough to survive a courtroom. I contacted the detective Dr. Patel had recommended, Detective Carla Ruiz, who specialized in domestic and financial crimes. We met at a coffee shop 30 minutes from my neighborhood. She wore plain clothes, no visible badge, nothing that screamed cop to casual observers. She listened to my entire story without interrupting once, then said simply, I believe you. It was the first time in months I felt like I wasn't losing my mind. We need for things, she said, sliding a legal pad toward me. Proof of the poison in something he prepared. Proof that he's the one obtaining it. Financial motive, and recordings or messages that reveal his mindset about your illness and your potential death. She explained that Colorado is a one-party consent state. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could record him without his knowledge. My first assignment, preserve one of the smoothies. The next morning, I poured nearly all of it into a clean, labeled container instead of the sink. My oldest friend, Jade, who had finally ignored my months of distance and shown up unannounced at my door, drove it to a private laboratory Detective Ruiz used regularly. The report came back fast. Arsenic compounds in concentrations that matched my blood levels exactly. Box 1. Checked. Now, we had to find out where he was getting it. I thought back to the woman at the restaurant. By then, I'd already researched her online. Her name was Tessa Ward, and she worked in accounts for a company that supplied industrial chemical solvents, metals, compounds used in manufacturing, including arsenic for wood treatment and glass production. On paper, she only handled numbers, not inventory. But I knew better than anyone how powerful access to numbers could be. Detective Ruiz suggested we wait, build the case methodically from the outside. I didn't wait. I found Tessa alone at a cafe near her office, scrolling on her phone, a salad untouched in front of her. "Hi," I said, heart pounding against my ribs. "You're Tessa, right?" She looked up, recognition flashing across her face. Before she could hide it, her jaw tightened. "You're Nora." Her tone made my name sound like an accusation. "Whatever your husband told you," she said flatly, "I don't want to be in the middle of it. He warned me you might make up stories." I sat down anyway. I slid the lab report across the table. "This is my blood work and an independent analysis of the smoothies Colin makes me every morning. Both show arsenic poisoning." She didn't even glance at the papers. "He told me you do this, that you're unstable, that you twist things, that you can't accept him being happy." Her words were rehearsed, polished smooth from repetition. I'd heard the same script from every manipulator I'd ever encountered in my workmen who rewrote reality until their victims doubted their own memories. So I changed tactics. "Did he ask you to get life insurance too?" I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. "500,000, I guessed. You as the insured, him as the beneficiary, framed as protecting your future together?" She didn't answer. "She didn't have to, Tessa," I said softly. "I'm not the jealous wife trying to drag him back. I'm the current mistake he's planning to cash out. You're the next one." Something in her finally cracked. She snatched up the paperwork. As racing over the numbers, her breathing going shallow. Then she told me her version of the story. She'd met Colin at a medical conference 14 months earlier. He said his marriage was already dead, that I was cold and distant, that he was only staying for now because I was too fragile to handle being left. He told her she was the love of his life, that she was his real future. 8 months ago, he'd convinced her to take out life insurance. Adulting, he'd called it. Building a foundation for their life together. Round the same time, he'd asked for a small professional favor. Could he use her company account to order some specialized materials for a project at work? His company's supplier was overpriced. She'd given him her login credentials without a second thought. She never checked what he ordered. She never saw where it shipped. Sitting there, I watched the realization roll over her in waves. He used my account, didn't he? Her hands trembled against the table. "If anyone investigates, it leads straight to me. Until he needs another tragedy," I said. "Then you're gone." And he's a 2-time widower with over $1 million in payouts. We sat in silence for a long moment. Two women who had both believed different versions of the same man. "What do we do?" she whispered. That was the week Jade forced her way back into my life for good. I knew something was wrong, she said when I finally told her everything. But warning a woman in love about her man is like telling a toddler not to eat sand. They have to chomp it themselves at least once. With Tessa cooperating, the case accelerated rapidly. She provided Detective Ruiz with her work login and a sworn statement. The detective pulled company records. There it was, an order for arsenic trioxide placed 6 months earlier using Tessa's credentials. The shipping address was a P.O. box in a strip mall across town, rented under the name David Clark. The postal facility had security cameras. The footage showed exactly what we expected. Colin unlocking that box and walking out with packages 3 separate occasions. Clear face, clear timeline. We now had the poison in my drinks. His covert purchase route, a massive insurance policy on my life, and a second policy on Tessa's life. We needed his words. Tessa kept seeing him as usual. She met him for drinks, listened to him complain about his sick wife, and recorded every word on her phone. On one recording, his voice was disturbingly gentle. Once Nora's health takes its natural course, he said, we won't have to hide anymore. It's awful, but at least she won't suffer forever, and we'll have the money to start fresh wherever we want. He discussed my death the way people discuss an upcoming move. Inconvenient, but ultimately exciting. At home, I kept playing the weak, grateful patient. Thank you for taking such good care of me, I told him one night, nearly choking on the words. I don't know what I'd do without you. He kissed my forehead. You'll be back to your old self soon. The hardest part was Evelyn. She sat by my bed, stroking my hair, tears welling in her eyes. I misjudged you, she whispered once, thinking I was asleep. You've been so good for my son. This isn't fair. She had no idea her son was the reason I looked half dead. I wanted to tear the truth open right there. Detective Ruiz warned me it was too dangerous. Mothers will burn evidence to protect their children. So I let Evelyn keep bringing soup and guilt, neither of which I needed. Detective Ruiz wanted something directly from Colin to complete the picture, especially regarding the insurance. Don't try to make him confess to poisoning you, she cautioned. He's not that careless. Just get him to talk calmly about what happens if you die. Jade helped tape the tiny recorder under my camisole. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Don't act strange, she said. Pretend it's just another underwire stabbing you. That night, I waited until after dinner, when he was relaxed and scrolling through his phone. I've been thinking a lot about worst-case scenarios, I began, letting my voice tremble. Dr. Patel says people with chronic conditions sometimes just don't bounce back. His expression softened. He set the phone aside. Hey, don't talk like that. I just need to know you'll be okay if something happens to me, I pushed. We have the life insurance, right? $750. He hesitated a moment too long, then nodded. Yeah, we're covered, but you're not going anywhere. If I did, I insisted, I'd want you to use that money. Start over. Move somewhere warm. You deserve a good life even if I'm not in it. He squeezed my hand. I'll take care of everything. I always do. No outrage at the idea of my death. No desperate I couldn't live without you. Just calm acceptance. Planning. Later that night, thinking I was asleep, he stepped into the hallway and called Tesser. She's fading, he said, voice low but perfectly audible. Doctor says it's just a matter of time. A few more weeks, maybe. Then it's just us. Everything we've been waiting for. I lay in the darkness, listening to my own death discussed like a delivery window. Something inside me went very still. He had never loved me, not for a single day. I was a project, an investment, a payout waiting to clear. The next morning, Detective Ruiz called. The judge signed the warrant, she said. We pick him up tomorrow. I had to survive one more night in bed with a man actively trying to kill me. The rest was almost anticlimactic. Colin left for work like always, kissing my forehead, telling me to rest. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Detective Ruiz and two uniformed officers. Morning, Nora, she said. Is Colin still home? He just left, I said. My voice sounded calm even to my own ears. They waited in an unmarked car at the end of the block. 5 minutes later, Colin's car circled back. He must have realized he'd forgotten his laptop. He walked through the front door, keys in hand, and froze at the sight of them. Colin Mercer, Detective Ruiz said. Badge displayed. You're under arrest for attempted first-degree murder and insurance fraud. He looked from her to me, calculating, searching my face for a crack he could exploit. This is a misunderstanding, he said smoothly. My wife is very sick. She gets confused. We have lab results, financial records, security footage, and audio recordings. She interrupted. You can discuss misunderstandings with your attorney. He didn't fight, didn't shout, just shut down completely, like a machine powering off. They read him his rights, cuffed him in our living room, and walked him out the front door. He never looked back at me once. I stood at the window with my coffee and watched the police car disappear down the street, carrying away my husband, my would-be murderer. And for years of my life, that suddenly felt like an elaborate con. I didn't feel triumphant, I just felt free and utterly exhausted. At the station, his attorney arrived within the hour. Colin's first move was predictable. Blame Tessa. She had access to industrial chemicals. He told the detectives. She was obsessed with me. She wanted Nora gone. I had no idea what she was doing. It might have worked, except Tessa was already in a conference room down the hall, cooperating fully with her own lawyer and Detective Ruiz. They played him the recordings, his own voice predicting my natural decline, his own voice discussing our money, and our fresh start with Tessa, the security. Footage of him collecting arsenic shipments from that P.O. box. His search history didn't help either. Symptoms of chronic arsenic exposure, life insurance payout timeline, slow poisons that mimic illness. On our shared home computer, for someone who thought he was brilliant, he left a trail of breadcrumbs a mile wide. His attorney eventually convinced him to stop talking and start negotiating. The district attorney concluded that Tessa had been manipulated. She hadn't known what he was ordering through her account. She hadn't known she was insured for his benefit. She pled to a minor charge related to misuse of company systems, received probation and mandatory counseling, and walked out with no prison time and a shattered worldview. She sent me one message through Detective Ruiz. "Thank you for telling me the truth." I never replied. We weren't friends. We were simply co-survivors of the same predator. Telling Evelyn was worse. Detective Ruiz handled the official notification, but I called afterward. "She says they believe Colin did this," Evelyn whispered, her voice cracking. "That can't be right. He took care of you." "I watched him do it." "I know," I said quietly. "You saw the same performance I did." She started to sob. "I brought you soup while he was." There was nothing I could say to that. She hadn't known. She was just another piece on his game board, positioned exactly where he needed her. We haven't spoken since. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days. I walked the jury through the illness, the tests, Dr. Patel's trembling hands, the smoothies, the hidden money, the affair, the recordings. I looked at Colin on the stand and searched for any trace of the man I had once loved. There was nothing there. Perhaps there never had been. The jury deliberated for under 5 hours. Guilty on attempted first-degree murder, guilty on insurance fraud, guilty on related domestic abuse charges. He received 15 years. Eligible for parole in 10. His professional licenses are permanently revoked. His reputation is ash. His careful little plan evaporated under the weight of documentation and women who finally compared notes. Recovery was both faster and slower than I expected. Physically, it took about 3 months for the arsenic to clear my system and my body to reset. My hair grew back thicker than before. The fog in my head lifted completely. Stairs stopped feeling like mountains. Legally, I filed for divorce the moment I could. The judge granted it immediately. I got the house. I sold it within a month. Every will held a lie. I didn't want to live inside them anymore. I moved to Austin. New city, new job, new apartment with big windows and a small kitchen where I make my own breakfast every morning. Eggs, toast, fruit, coffee. Very boring, very safe. I've learned to love boring. Jade. And I have dinner every Thursday over FaceTime when we can't meet in person. She has never once said, "I told you so." Real friends don't need to. I see a therapist twice a month. We talk about control and how it should never feel like love, about how isolation disguised as protection is a warning sign, not a fairy tale. Sometimes letters arrive from the prison with Colin's handwriting on the envelopes. I don't open them. I don't need his apologies or his justifications. I don't need to know what story he's constructed for himself now. Some doors don't get cracked open again. They get bricked over permanently. I used to lie awake asking myself how I hadn't seen it sooner, how the forensic accountant missed the fraud happening in her own home. Now I understand better. Predators like Colin rehearse their roles for years before they ever find their targets. They study what we want: safety, attention, a partner who takes care of everything, and then they weaponize it against us. My only mistake was confusing control with care, confusing intensity with intimacy. I will never make that mistake again. These days, my life is quiet. I drink coffee by the window and watch the city wake up. I go to work. I come home to an apartment that isn't empty, it's peaceful. When I get lonely, I call Jade or my sister or my father. I let people in slowly now, on my own terms. Someone asked me recently if I would ever marry again. Maybe, maybe not. What I know for certain is this: I will never again surrender my passwords, my calendar, my friendships, and my intuition to anyone in the name of love. My father used to say, documentation is protection. He meant it about audits and tax cases. It turns out that advice saved my life. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your story is the one sleeping beside you. And sometimes the most powerful person is the one who finally decides to believe her own evidence. Colin underestimated me. That was his last miscalculation.